The day my husband died, I thought I'd lost everything. But I was wrong. The real loss came 3 weeks later when my daughter stood in the doorway of the home I built for our family, handed me a suitcase and said, "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." She smiled like she was doing me a favor. 3 days after that, I sat across from our lawyer as he flipped through the real will and laughed. "Did she even read this?" he said. Because if she had, she would have known. And in that moment, everything changed. I'm Helen Marlowe, and this is the story of how I went from grieving widow to a woman holding every single card they tried to steal from me. Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. Just say "listening" in the comments or let me know where you are. I love hearing how far my story reaches. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. And if my story touches you, makes you angry, or gives you strength, please consider subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything, but for someone like me, who spent a lifetime being dismissed, every subscriber feels like someone saying, "I see you now." Thank you for seeing me. The day my husband died, I thought I'd lost everything, but I was wrong. The real loss came 3 weeks later when my daughter stood in the doorway of the home I built for our family, handed me a suitcase and said, "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." She smiled like she was doing me a favor. 3 days after that, I sat across from our lawyer as he flipped through the real will and laughed. "Did she even read this?" he said. Because if she had, she would have known. And in that moment, everything changed. I'm Helen Marlowe, and this is the story of how I went from grieving widow to a woman holding every single card they tried to steal from me. Before I share my story, I want to know you were here with me. Just say, "listening" in the comments, or let me know where you are. I love hearing how far my story reaches. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. And if my story touches you, makes you angry, or gives you strength, please consider subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything, but for someone like me, who spent a lifetime being dismissed, every subscriber feels like someone saying, "I see you now. Thank you for seeing me." It had been 1 week since we buried Cassius. I hadn't touched his study. His suit still hung in the closet, his cologne still lingered in the master bathroom. The entire house, Evercrest Manor, 845 Redwood Lane, still felt like him. That day, the sun barely broke through the stained glass windows, and dust hung in the air like ash. I was sitting on the oak bench in the hallway holding a cedar box that still smelled like him. Inside it, his favorite fountain pen engraved with CVM, and a small silver key I couldn't place. That's when I heard the front door swing open. No knock. Lydia's heels clicked sharp against the wood floor like gunshots. Graham trailed behind her suit-pressed phone to his ear, mumbling numbers under his breath. They didn't sit down. They dropped 2 large suitcases beside me. "What's this?" I asked. "Your things," Lydia said, as if I should have known. Her voice was smooth and cold. "I'm the heir mother. The house is mine now. You were just staying here." "Cassius never said he also didn't say you could rot in this house forever," she snapped. Then she smiled as if she pitied me. "You should find somewhere appropriate. A place with people your age. Somewhere with nurses." Graham handed me $200 like a tip. "That'll cover a few nights. We even printed a list of senior homes we recommend." Sunset Inn had vacancies. I don't remember standing. Just the sound of my suitcase wheels rolling across the floor. Just the shimmer of Evercrest's foyer tiles. The same ones Cassius used to polish every spring himself with an old rag and whiskey. As we passed the living room, I noticed Cassius's study door, once always locked, stood wide open. Files were everywhere, cabinets emptied. I should have said something, but I didn't. I was in shock. My eyes caught the Japanese maple outside the one he planted on our 10th anniversary. The taxi's window reflected it like a ghost. Sunset Inn reeked of mildew. The carpet was worn, threadbare, stained. The fluorescent lights flickered like dying stars. I dropped the cedar box onto the sagging bed, opened it again. The pen was still there, and that key cool and small in my hand. Cassius used to disappear into his study for hours, always locked his desk, always had secrets I wasn't supposed to worry about. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about the last thing he ever told me. Don't let anyone decide what this house means to you. His voice echoed from the walls, deep and steady, like it was speaking through the wood itself. At 7:06 a.m., I called Howard Claiborne. I looked down at the $200 bills crumpled on the faded bedsheet. I had nothing left to lose except the truth. Silverwood's downtown smelled like fresh paper and old books. The Claiborne Law Office sat between a pastry shop and an antiques dealer nestled in a row of brick buildings with ivy crawling up their sides. I walked in as the morning sun hit the front glass, still holding the cedar box. My hands shook as I signed the guest register. The receptionist looked up startled. "I thought you were away," she murmured. Howard came out moments later. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Helen." But Lydia said, "Never mind, come in." His office was lined with law degrees and antique books. There was a tray of tea and lemon biscuits untouched. I sat across from him as he pulled out a file with a red ribbon seal. "This is the most recent will, 6 months before Cassius passed. It was signed notarized and filed with the city." He opened it. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. To my wife, Helen Marlowe. I leave Evercrest Manor, all personal belongings therein, and 70% of the total estate, estimated at $23 million. To my daughter, Lydia Marlowe Renshaw, I leave $10 million placed in a trust to be released under the condition that she treats her mother with respect and dignity. I couldn't breathe. I hadn't been to any will reading. I hadn't known there was one. Howard leaned back, smiling bitterly. Did she even read this? Because if she had, she'd know what she just gave up. The paper Lydia shoved at me at the house, it had a different font, a different logo, and no signature seal. I dug it out of my purse. Howard compared them side by side. One was a fake. "She claimed you were on vacation," he said. "Said you approved her representing you by proxy." I felt bile rise in my throat. Howard turned serious. "This qualifies as potential elder abuse, fraud, possibly forgery. We need to act." He picked up the phone and dialed Detective Ramirez, someone he'd worked with on inheritance fraud before. As he explained the situation, I stared at the tiny silver key in my palm. Cassius always kept the bottom left drawer of his desk locked. Always. Howard caught me staring. "That key, you found it after he passed?" I nodded. "That desk may hold everything we need to make this stick. Hold on to it. We'll get a warrant if we must." He handed me a list of all Cassius's accounts and assets, including a note about banks already being notified to place temporary freezes on activity. If Lydia tried to move funds, she'd be met with a wall of red tape. Just as I stepped out into the hallway, my phone buzzed. 10 missed calls from Lydia. I didn't answer. Howard's assistant stepped in behind me, whispering, "The bank confirmed. Accounts are locked." I stared out at the street. Shoppers strolled by with coffee cups and strollers oblivious. But I knew this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. When the truth comes out, those who think they hold all the power are often the first to watch it slip through their fingers. By the time I stepped out of Howard Claiborne's office, the machinery had already started moving. I wasn't the only one who woke up that morning with a new sense of reality. Lydia, it seemed, had just tried to buy a $1,200 handbag and got denied. Her call came in before I even reached the end of the block. The tone wasn't angry at first, it was panic disguised as confusion. "Mom, something weird is happening. My cards aren't working. They said something about a freeze and the bank isn't giving me answers." I let her speak until the desperation turned sour. "I don't know what you told them," she snapped, "but this is a mistake. I'm your daughter, not a criminal. Read the will." I said, then hung up. Over the next 48 hours, the dominoes started falling. Emails shot through financial institutions like sparks down a dry wire. Systems flagged transactions. Access codes were reset. And somewhere in the middle of that chaos, Lydia still tried to pretend everything was fine. At La Seraphine Silverwood's high-end French restaurant, she showed up in full glamour. Graham wasn't with her. She was with friends. Her laughter was forced but loud. She ordered the wine. She always bragged about the duck confit she once said only peasants didn't understand. Then she handed over her inheritance card and smiled. The card reader blinked once, twice, then spat out a quiet beep. Declined. The manager leaned in, discreet but firm. "Do you have another form of payment, ma'am?" Lydia's cheeks tightened. Her friends leaned toward each other, whispers flitting like gnats. She tried another card. Another beep. The waiter, less polite this time, brought over the check unpaid. Meanwhile, across town, Detective Ramirez sat with a digital scan of the will Lydia had shoved in my face just days earlier. He enlarged the watermark, scanned the notary's signature, and cross-referenced microdots in the ink with a database of printing vendors. That led him to a small but notable company, Sable Printworks, located right in the heart of Silicon View Business Park. And on its client list in plain view was one name, Crescent Oak Capital, Graham's firm. Ramirez leaned back and scribbled something in his notes. Graham, meanwhile, sat in his corner office skimming through an internal memo. The subject line was short, brutal compliance audit notice. He went pale. He closed his laptop slowly, then picked up his phone. "Don't say anything," he told Lydia. "To anyone. Don't use the cards. Don't talk to your mother. We need time to fix this." But time was running out. That same day, I returned to Evercrest not as a guest, but as the rightful owner. Detective Ramirez accompanied me with a signed warrant to secure Cassius's study. The room was dusty, oddly untouched. The desk, the same one Cassius guarded with cryptic seriousness, was still there. Ramirez stepped aside as I pulled out the little silver key. It turned with a click that sounded louder than it should have. Inside the hidden compartment, there were 3 USB drives labeled with numbers, a leather-bound notebook with strange symbols and notes, and a weathered business card. No name, just a government seal and a phone number with a federal prefix. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. Whatever Cassius was involved in it went deeper than family, feuds, and frozen assets. I handed the contents over, sealed in a manila envelope. "You're doing the right thing," Ramirez said quietly. "Keep your distance. Let us handle the rest." I stood in the doorway looking at the manor's bones. The walls no longer felt haunted. They felt like mine again. Outside, the wind was changing. La Seraphine glowed like a golden memory. The chandeliers cast soft halos over each linen-covered table, and a violinist played something delicate and French. It was the kind of place that made you feel important just for sitting down. Lydia arrived wearing a silver dress that shimmered like betrayal. She greeted the hostess with that rehearsed smile I used to think was genuine. Her friends had gathered in a private booth near the window drinks already half full. They laughed too loudly, talked about money like it grew on trees. Lydia slid in like royalty returning from war. The waiter brought out wine without a word. Lydia didn't ask the price. Back in my motel room, I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand. Ramirez had promised updates. I didn't want them. I needed them. At 8:43 p.m., a message buzzed through. "She's seated. Stand by." Back at the restaurant, Lydia raised her glass. "To freedom," she said. The table laughed. She reached for her wallet, already expecting applause. The waiter ran the card. Beep, beep, declined. Lydia's smile faltered. She handed another. Declined. The manager approached, trying to keep it quiet, but nothing was quiet at La Seraphine. One friend nudged another. Whispers spread like gas on flame. That's when they entered. 2 officers, one male, one female, both dressed in plain clothes but flashing badges the moment they stepped into the glow. The music stuttered. The room held its breath. Lydia Marlowe Renshaw, the male officer, asked. She stood confused. "What is this?" "You're being placed under arrest for suspected financial fraud forgery of a legal document and attempted inheritance deception." "Wait, no. My mother will fix this. My mother will stand with me." I was already standing in the doorway. She turned and froze. Her voice broke. "Mom?" My silence was louder than any scream. As they cuffed her hands behind her back, her lipstick smeared as she yelled, "We paid that damn print company 10 times for this. You don't know what you're doing." The room erupted in hushed shock. That sentence would be replayed in Ramirez's report, a line too clear to ignore. Outside, camera phones clicked. Not all guests were strangers. Some were journalists, others influencers. All of them now had a new headline to run. I stood still as Lydia was guided into the back of a cruiser, her silver dress catching the red and blue flash like a spotlight. She looked small, finely small, and I felt nothing. Not pride, not anger, not even sadness, just clarity. She wasn't a child anymore. She wasn't my responsibility anymore. I had chosen law over loyalty, truth over silence. As the taillights disappeared into the dark, I whispered to no one in particular I thought the war was over, but it was only the first battle. The morning after Lydia's arrest, silence settled over Evercrest Manor like dust. The house had always been full of voices, Cassius's footsteps, Lydia's demands, even Graham's low calculating hum from his calls. But now it was just me and the truth I was starting to unearth. While Lydia sat in a holding cell, Graham returned to work like nothing had happened. He stepped into Crescent Oak Capitol in his usual tailored suit, greeted the receptionist with a nod, and walked straight to his office. But the atmosphere had shifted. His assistant avoided eye contact. The air was brittle with rumors. He had barely sat down when he was summoned to Conference Room B. Waiting inside were 3 compliance officers and a printed copy of their audit. On the last page, a vendor list. At the top, Sable Printworks. Graham denied everything, said he had no idea how fake legal documents ended up connected to their vendor, but the paper trail was too clean, too close. The invoices for client material print jobs bore his signature. Back at Evercrest, I unlocked the cedar box again. This time I plugged in the first USB. A list of transactions scrolled across the screen, every single one tied to Crescent Oak Capital. Dates, amounts, account numbers. Notes in Cassius's handwriting embedded in metadata. He'd been tracking Graham for months, maybe years. I sat back, breath caught in my throat. Cassius had known. Some people, he once told me, don't see you at all. Just the dollars you stand in front of. I never realized then that he meant someone in our own family. I sent the USB files to Carolyn Wu, a former FBI analyst turned private investigator. She'd been helping Detective Ramirez dig deeper. Within hours, she called. "There's a pattern," she said. "These aren't just shady transactions. This looks like structured payments, money laundering." My fingers went cold around the phone. Later that day, Graham called me. His voice was calmer than I expected, but something in it trembled. "Helen, I think things got out of hand. This was never meant to hurt you. You forged a will," I said. "Lydia did. Look, there's no reason to burn everything down. I have an idea. We can go back, split the estate, clean, quiet." He wanted to bargain. I put the call on speaker and hit record. "I'm offering you a way out," he said. "All that money in Cassius's accounts. It's not clean. You know that, don't you? Do you?" There was a pause. "Then we can both walk away from this. You get your piece. I get mine." I said nothing. Just let the silence hang until he hung up. Later, I played the recording for Carolyn. She didn't smile. "He's not just scared. He's drowning." She wasn't wrong. But Cassius hadn't left me to drown with him. He had charted the waters. He had left me the maps. As I watched the files populate on my screen, names, payments, encrypted notes, I realized something I hadn't been ready to accept. Cassius didn't just leave behind a house or a fortune. He left behind a war, and I was the last soldier standing. Carolyn called again 2 days later. "I think you need to see this in person," she said. We met at Howard Claiborne's office, where she laid out a new set of documents, bank transfers, flagged communications, and a memo from an international finance watchdog. All of it pointed to one conclusion. Cassius's accounts were part of a long-standing laundering network. "Your husband was either involved," she said carefully, "or he was watching it from the inside." I wanted to scream or cry, but I didn't. Instead, I asked, "If that's true, what happens to the estate?" Howard looked grim. "If the government classifies the money as criminal proceeds, they can seize everything." I sat back, feeling the floor tilt beneath me. That's when Graham called again. "I know what they're telling you," he said, his voice sharper now. "But there's something they don't know. What's that Cassius was compromised? He was involved. If they dig too far, they'll find it. And you'll lose it all." He paused. "Unless you let this go," my skin went cold. "I'll say it straight. You back off and no one has to know what that money really is." That night, I opened the second USB. There was a single audio file. I clicked play. Cassius's voice filled the room. "This is Agent D, right," he said. "I've pulled the last quarter's data. Graham's group is getting sloppy. They're pushing too much through at once." Then another voice, calm and clipped. "We'll take it from here, Mr. Marlowe. Stay in place." I stared at the screen. Cassius had been a source, an informant. Howard reviewed the file. If this holds up, he said Cassius wasn't laundering money. He was helping track those who did. Then the estate clean. Protected. You're safe. Carolyn nodded. "We can confirm with the Bureau. It took 2 phone calls, a chain of verification, and a scheduled visit. At the Los Angeles FBI field office, I met Agent Dana Cross. She looked over the data, reviewed the audio, and made a few calls. Then she sat back. It's true. Cassius Marlowe worked with us for 12 years. Most of his reports came through private channels. That USB holds classified evidence. I felt like I could breathe again. Agent Cross looked at me. "But we need something more." I frowned. "More." "We believe Graham and Lydia are orchestrating more than just one forged will. This wasn't their first attempt. We want to catch them in the act." She opened a case and pulled out a device, small, black, and wired. "We need you to wear this, set up a meeting. Pretend you're open to settling, let them talk." I stared at the device. "I'm not a spy." "You don't have to be," she said. "Just be a mother who wants answers." Back at Evercrest, I stood in the master bedroom staring at myself in the mirror. The house around me was no longer a battlefield. It was a command center. I unbuttoned the blouse Cassius once bought me on our 30th anniversary. Agent Cross slipped the wire into place, adjusted the clip, and stepped back. "You'll be fine," she said. But my voice, when it came, was steady. All my life I've let others steer the ship. Tonight I take the wheel. Outside, the sky burned gold as the sun dipped behind the trees, and I walked out the door not as a widow, not as a victim, but as the end of the line for every secret they thought would never be uncovered. I had fresh flowers delivered that morning. Not roses, Lydia always hated their thorns. I chose white lilies, the kind Cassius used to bring home after long trips. I trimmed the stems myself and placed them in the center of the room, right where our family portrait used to hang. I wanted everything to be deliberate. This wasn't a reconciliation, this was a reckoning. The living room at Evercrest was quiet, clean, almost sterile. I arranged 3 chairs, mine slightly apart, the other 2 directly opposite. A silent invitation, but not a warm one. At 7:03 p.m., the gate camera blinked. I watched from the side window as Graham's black sedan pulled up the drive. Lydia stepped out first. She looked smaller than I remembered, thinner, her skin gray under the porch light. She didn't knock, just walked in like it was still hers. Graham followed, briefcase in hand, tailored coat, unbuttoned expression, unreadable. They paused when they saw the setup. No drinks, no pleasantries. I gestured for them to sit. Let's begin. Graham spoke first. We're not here to fight. There's a way out for everyone. He opened his case, pulling out a neatly typed agreement. You keep the house. $5 million, clean. No questions asked. We walk away. It ends. I tilted my head. And the other $28 million. He didn't flinch. That money is complicated. You know that. If you push this, everything comes out. Everything about Cassius. You think the government will let you keep it once they know where it came from. I let a long silence stretch between us. Then I said gently, they already know. I told them. Lydia stiffened. Her eyes darted to Graham. You're bluffing, he said. I leaned forward. Are you sure you want to test that? He hesitated. Just for a second. It was enough. I studied his face. When did you find out Cassius had updated his will? Graham shifted in his seat. That's not relevant. But it is, I pressed. You said he kept the latest version in his private safe. That's not something you guess. That's something you knew. Lydia's fingers trembled. Tell me, I said calmly. Did you plan to take everything before he died or just after Graham's voice sharpened? We had no choice. He was going to cut us off completely. I nodded. So you forged the old will, got a crooked notary, and pretended I was out of town during the reading. He snapped. We did what we had to do. You were never supposed to be part of this. He died too soon. The new will wasn't. He stopped. The air froze. I smiled sad and tired. Thank you. The front door opened. Agent Cross stepped in, followed by 2 officers. Their presence was quiet, rehearsed. Graham stood up, fury in his eyes. You set me up, I stood as well. No, you set yourself up. I just watched. The cuffs went on. Lydia didn't move. She sank into her chair, hands over her face. They read the charges aloud. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, financial exploitation of a dependent adult. It went on. I didn't cry. Not when the door shut behind them. Not when the lilies tipped slightly from the draft. Not even when the silence returned. Lydia turned before they led her out. Her voice cracked. You did this to your own daughter, I didn't blink. And what did you do to your mother? The red light on the hidden camera blinked one last time. Everything was recorded. Every word, every breath. I was no longer the one on trial. 6 months later, Evercrest didn't look like a crime scene anymore. We had replaced the heavy curtains with sheer ones, let the light in, repainted the walls in pale almond and sage green. The kitchen, Lydia's least favorite room, now smelled of cinnamon and warm bread. My morning coffee tasted like peace. I walked the halls barefoot, feeling the wood beneath my soles. Cassius's study had become a reading nook. The cedar box sat untouched in the glass cabinet. I hadn't opened the final USB. Some doors are better left closed. Downstairs, Sarah Chen waited in the new office wing. She was young, sharp, and kind. A former social worker turned financial advisor. I hired her to run the foundation. The Helen Marlowe Foundation, she said proudly this morning. We've helped 73 cases so far, seniors taken advantage of by their children. It's, changing lives. I nodded. Good. Let's keep going. She handed me a letter. Lydia's 17th. The handwriting had grown less angry, less performative. This one simply said I was wrong. I folded it and slid it into the drawer without comment. Sarah watched me. Will you ever write back? I smiled faintly. Forgiveness is not a requirement of justice. At noon, the call from Netflix came through. A producer confirmed the green light. A documentary, The Widow's Justice. I had editorial approval. Control over what the world would see. You're a symbol now, the producer said. People want to understand how this happened. I'm still trying to understand it myself. Later that week, a letter arrived from Agent Cross. A certificate tucked inside thanked me for my cooperation. Cassius's name was listed an alias he used as an informant. He had helped crack 47 white-collar crime cases. No headlines, just a file marked declassified. I stood in my studio that night painting. For the first time in years, I chose myself as the subject. A woman, middle-aged, standing in light, no shadows behind her, no children clinging to her side, no husband defining her frame. Just me. The final shot of the documentary crew was filmed on the porch. "Do you think you've won?" the reporter asked. I looked past the lens toward the trees I had replanted along the driveway. I think I've learned how to live. And that was enough. As the crew packed up, I stepped off the porch, the late autumn wind lifting my hair. Cassius used to say I chose you because you were rooted like a tree. They tried to dig me up, but my roots went deeper than they ever imagined.